Hello and welcome to Views from the Market, Midmarket Private Equity and M&A in Canada. My name is Mario Nigro and I'm a partner at Stikeman, Elliott. For today's podcast, I'd like to welcome David Au-Yeung and Victor Wong. David and Victor are the founders of CollectiveXP. David, Victor, thank you for joining us and welcome.
Thank you.
David, Victor, we always start the podcast by asking our guests to tell us a little bit about themselves, about their history, and in your case, about CollectiveXP. So I'd love to start there. Maybe we start with David.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Mario. I immigrated here when I was young from Hong Kong to Toronto. So like vast kind of, broad background from Hong Kong and to Canada. Went through schooling, went to the University of Waterloo for computer engineering in the early 2000s. I have always been entrepreneurial. And one core theme with me is that I've always worked with friends and also played with friends from sports to businesses. A few years after graduation from Waterloo, myself and 3 other of my classmates created a company. It was really difficult in the beginning. And this was in the mid 2000s. So the whole venture capital scene wasn't really existent in Canada. But, we had this kind of passion for entrepreneurship and just being able to work together and build something. Luck was on our side. The iPhone came out and we created a company called Flipp. So we had a few years of just navigating early ideas. Eventually we pivoted to Flipp. That was back in, I believe, 2010 when we created that. And, long story short, went through tremendous growth, got up to over 100 million revenue. We had around 450 people work at Flipp at one time. We went through the whole venture funded kind of path. And at the end, we turned around into a more profitable, created a lot of profit in the company. We got up to 25% EBITDA margins and we sold the company in 2023.
How about yourself?
Yeah, thanks very much for having us on the podcast. So similarly to David, I was also born in Hong Kong and immigrated to Canada when I was really young, around 8 years old. Didn't go to Waterloo, but went to Western for business. And so started my career in accounting, actually at EY, going through their accounting practice, audit practice, and then doing a little bit of their transaction advisory services. So keeping with the theme of friends, one of my really good friends, also a great friend of David's, who's one of the founders at Flipp, asked me to join them right after the close of their Series A round. So this was around 2011, just to put the reference point there. So I joined Flipp as team member 21 and looked after their operations and finance. And so the journey there, as David alluded to, is as a VC-backed tech growth startup journey, where we were looking for obviously product market fit, and then scaling that business from team member 21 when I got there to what David had mentioned about 450 people at its peak. Got to 100 million revenues and then the 25% EBITDA margins. And so kind of seeing that journey in phases of startup fundraising to mid-market scale up, that was really interesting. And it kind of forms our journey and our mindset of CollectiveXP.
Obviously, you sold the business, you had a great exit, and then you kind of evolved and went further. Maybe that takes us to talking about CollectiveXP and the kind of evolution of the idea behind CollectiveXP and kind of what you're doing now. David, tell us about the evolution of CollectiveXP.
Yeah, so after the exit, we also had like front row seats to the deal that happened. And then, I was like pretty interested in that. And I thought to myself, hey, our networks are full of top tier tech people. And growing up, from an entrepreneurial family, being around a lot of small, medium-sized businesses as well too, I was thinking, hey, there's a challenge here. There's an opportunity that how can we bring tech and tech enablement to many small, medium-sized businesses out there? That was the first thoughts. And I think, a lot of times, especially startups, there's a lot of luck involved. And we were lucky that within our network, there were many other friends that own businesses and that needed help in their software and AI automation related kind of problem set. So CollectiveXP was born out of just helping our friends really improve their businesses. From our observation there and also, other connections I've had growing up, I learned about the search space. I learned about this whole ecosystem of private equity in the lower mid-market. And then we naturally got very interested in it because we felt like, number one, we really wanted to invest in the space. The returns historically have been amazing. Secondly, these are real people, real families, and real businesses that we feel like a passion to help. Right. And thirdly, we feel we have access to the skills and the network of people who can actually provide a lot of value. So, 2 years ago, we started dabbling in it and we started making investments. I think Victor, you can speak to more. And we've been kind of steadily growing it. We've always taken a more of a startup mindset. So a lot of testing and learning and observation and just learning from people in the industry, right? Our background is in tech, but our background is not in private equity. So we're very humble in our approach to just listen to see where we fit.
Can I ask you, to David's point, a bit more about the sweet spot for CollectiveXP? What kind of businesses are you looking for? Because I think what's interesting I know about CollectiveXP, but I mean, you said it, David, it's not just about the capital, right? You're bringing more that just makes your proposition to a company very unique, particularly for the middle market and lower middle market. So I guess if I say at the sweet spot, what are you looking for, Victor, for CollectiveXP?
Yeah, for your listeners, they might call it the difference that we were VC backed, obviously very different paths than traditional search, kind of investing with smaller check sizes and, more private equity type deals. But when we look at the actual operating business, the scalability of the business, we see a lot of kind of similarities in operations, right? First time operators usually are tasked with scaling business, to a 3x, 5x type returns in a specific timeline. It's not the typical unicorn returns that VC funds are looking for, but there is pressure on a first-time operator to grow that business and scale that business tremendously, right? As part of the whole search thesis. And so we don't necessarily look at a specific industry. We look at those individuals who are in seat that has a desire to grow their business, not just traditionally kind of like the sales marketing, hire sales team, clean it up, professionalize, et cetera, but the creativity of how can we both maximize the margins and also grow top line. So with technology now in play, I think one of the things where potentially people have considered that inaccessible due to potential costs is just the complexities of putting that into a traditional business. But Dave and I have had conversations with, CEOs, searchers, and the brainstorming aspect and the willingness to brainstorm about how could we work together to see that business succeed, see your business grow together. I think that's one of the things that we see as a lane for a CollectiveXP. So if you have an idea, if you have a vision and you see tech as potentially a part of the journey, but don't know how to start, I think that's where the conversations, with Dave and I are the most fruitful, because we always brainstorm and collaborate, and we can put tech in places where most people wouldn't consider it.
Can I ask you, when you look at a business, are you looking for a particular size and, a profile? Does it need to have a cash flow positive? If I can ask a bit more about the kind of granularity of the type of businesses you invest in, and, what does your investment look like? Is it minority, majority, size? What are the kind of boundaries by which you work under when it comes to your investments?
Okay, so on the train of thought of traditional search, we're looking for the type of searchers that are, obviously searchers have to have the background and their professional background, but we're looking for someone that we can work with, that we can ideate with. And I know we're looking for humility, because we feel, and we said this at Flipp a lot of times, is that, you may have a solution A, a solution B, but I think, with a lot of smart people who are humble together, you can create a solution C. So we're looking for those individuals who want to get us involved to ideate a bit about their thoughts on the industry, because our background is in the tech startup side mostly. So ideation is very important. And I think we can provide a lot of value before a deal gets done. So those are what we're looking for. So in terms of equity check sizes, we invested in one company at $500,000. So I think that's a sweet spot for us at this point, while we're making more and more investments. From a search perspective, we're looking for minority investments where we can provide value. We can add value with our operational background, our technical background, while at the same time, Victor and I have looked into, potentially taking majority investments as well too. But that is the type of deal flow that we have to keep building up, right? We have to start somewhere. And those ones, we will look for opportunities to add AI, automation, and tech to it. And with majority ownership, I think we would be able to drive a lot of the execution with our teams.
David, it sounds like you're willing to do deals with traditional searchers, with self-funded people who find a deal. But what's more interesting, it sounds like you're saying even if someone has an idea of an opportunity, they shouldn't hesitate to call you earlier on, even without an LOI, just to kind of look at ways you can work together or partner together. Is that correct?
Yeah, 100%. Because I think for us, relationship matters a lot, right? And as you can kind of see in our theme, we tend to really focus on friendship, and that relationship is like the core thesis of our professional lives. So having an earlier conversation with someone for them to get to know us is important, and for us to get to know them. And also, like, secondly, for your listeners to understand is the capital that we deploy, we're not deploying out of a traditional kind of fund, right? This is our own capital that we deploy. So we have quite a bit of flexibility in how we kind of choose our opportunities.
Victor, you've obviously developed this thesis that investing in the lower middle market and the middle market is kind of the place to be. Can I ask you a bit about what are the opportunities you're seeing? Like, why is this space attractive to you, given, the value that you bring? Obviously, it's not just the capital, but the kind of skill sets that you bring in terms of helping these organizations with technology, with AI, with software development. What is the opportunity that you're seeing?
Yeah, so in the deals that we've been exposed to, especially in this asset class, we definitely see a lot of really great opportunities. The business itself, all the businesses actually that we see are profitable. They're sound businesses, right? And so a lot of these have been bootstrapped, blood, sweat, and tears to grow the company to the stage where it is now. But like I was saying before, I don't see a lot of technology, right? Technology isn't necessarily placed in there. Maybe it's because of a lack of skill set. Maybe the thought is like, it's too expensive. There's not a lot of kind of technology that we see in these businesses. And, coming from where we were, like, all technology was the main thing that helped us grow. We think we could take that and translate that down to the lower mid-market, to these assets, and actually be able to scale these companies with not a lot of resources that were previously planned. So looking at just from a P&L perspective, you could really expand the margin while potentially even actually reducing the cost. And with AI kind of being the prominent buzzword in market, there's a lot of people that, see the media reports and want to put that into business, but really don't know how. And so we've been using machine learning, previous form of AI, quite a bit on our side as well to grow Flipp. And so it's one of those things where we can apply our expertise in both operations and scaling and help these entrepreneurs, these searchers, grow and scale their business going forward. So we see a lot of those opportunities, and this is why it's like really exciting for us. It doesn't have to be a tech-based software business where we can help. We can help kind of any businesses that have operational processes. For example, repeatable process that someone manually is doing, we can help automate all those things plus more, right? So this is just the beginning for this asset class with tech.
And then Mario, can I add to it too? As part of CollectiveXP, we also work on our own individual internal projects and incubation of our own products. So we've been leveraging the latest of generative AI, agentic AI, to create, those solutions. So we have quite a bit of experience, and our whole thing is about how do we apply technology that can be used in business now, right? Like, we're not into research, right? We're into application. So a lot of things, we know how to use it, and we've been using it.
If I could drill down on that, so what's super interesting about CollectiveXP is it's not only that you're a capital provider, it's that a whole other dimension of what you bring in terms of the value add. Like, where do you see yourself adding value on the ground? Like, when you look at these opportunities and, given your experience and your background, you look at these companies, and obviously there's a lot of different ways. So I'm just giving some examples of where you see, hey, when we're involved in these companies, these are the kind of things that we can drive forward.
Yeah, so I can kind of separate into two camps. One is a live example of us helping a searcher post-closing. This one happened to be a software company that has been around for over 15, 20 years. So typically when we see that, and as a software engineering professional, a lot of things are built from a lot of technical debt from way before. So in this community, when investors look at these deals, there's a lot of hesitation with the technical debt and how to quantify what's the actual risk with the products and the technology. Because we've been doing this, it's much easier for us to get comfortable with that. So in this deal, we were able to bring in a fractional tech leader post-closing to help the CEO. We were able to connect them with, our offshore team to help them with modernization in terms of just even executing on their plan. So that's one example. On the other side is the non-tech companies. But by the way, this example is for something we're incubating ourselves. It's a capability we have. So one thing we noticed from an application of agentic AI perspective, when we look at it, we look for, are there repeatable human activities that happens in a business? Like, for example, one thing we've kind of played around with is, can we replace a human making a phone call as a follow-up? So we've been able to leverage a lot of interesting tooling that's available out there right now to have a full 15-minute conversation post-service, post-sales, to just even ask 100% of your customers, how did you feel about the service that was provided? And then I think because we're thinking also about data, the 15-minute conversation using AI can be classified and can be understood and can be analyzed so that it gives informed insight and decisions and next steps to the operator. So this is one example that we have applied in our own businesses. That's why CollectiveXP, in our opinion, is very interesting, because we're looking to help existing businesses that have been around for 10, 15 years. We're looking to help the searchers take over, transition, and really grow it. But at the same time, we're leveraging all of the tests and the tooling that we've been building on the latest application of AI for our own products. So all that learning gets translated into what we can provide for the search community.
Victor, David, I want to ask you, I always have this the crystal ball question when I ask people to talk about where they see the market going, where they see the opportunities. We've obviously talked a bit about yourselves. What are the trends you're seeing? And obviously we talked a bit about AI and some of the changes that are coming, but I wanted to get a sense from you about, where you see the market going in terms of opportunities and where you see CollectiveXP going.
Yeah. So Mario, for us, as we look into some of the deals and review some of the opportunities that come across our desk, I think there's a big focus, especially for the searchers, to professionalize these businesses, right? A lot of them, as I mentioned earlier, you see the growth levers as hire sales team, professionalize the back office, et cetera. And I think those are definitely opportunities that is part of the playbook and that can be there to grow the bottom line. Because I think with the technology world that we live in, we see that as ripe for automation. And I think we see that in every single deal that to grow. That back office where people are doing repeatable tasks, even providing customer service, the phone calls, all that stuff. I think those can definitely be improved with technology. I think there's an aspect of also having now with technology in play, there is things where people are no longer limited to a 9 to 5. They're no longer limited even to a specific geography. So opening up time for people, opening up geography for people, those are all opportunities I think that weren't seen before. And those are certain growth areas that apply to kind of all the business opportunities that we're seeing in this space, is that now they can actually open up and, tackle many different things that they didn't think they were capable of before, just because of limitation of, say, time and location. I think that really opens it up for opportunities to grow for all businesses in the sector.
Yeah, and I'll add to, as CollectiveXP, it's been a year or so of us investing in the space. We find that very interesting. I agree with everything that Victor talked about. I think looking forward into CollectiveXP's journey is that we want to build a network of other investors who think like us, who want to invest alongside of us as well too, because we feel that application of technology can really help exponentially increase growth. And we're looking for those like-minded people as well too. Right now, as I mentioned earlier, we're investing all of our own capital to start, but looking to the future, I do think we will look to partner with other folks.
Victor, David, I want to thank you for joining us and telling us a bit about your history and telling us about CollectiveXP. It's a great story, and we need more CollectiveXPs in our marketplace. So it's super exciting to see some of the work you're doing and some of the, not only the capital that you provide, but that additional value add that you're bringing to kind of really help to grow middle market companies. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for telling us your story.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for tuning in to Views from the Market. Stay updated with the latest episodes by subscribing wherever you find your podcasts or visiting stikeman.com/viewsfromthemarket.